If you give yourself these next minutes, I want to walk with you through an idea that has the power to reshape your life in a quiet, steady way, not through force, not through pressure, but through something far simpler, giving your full attention back to yourself for just 30 days. Most people move through life reacting to noise, requests, expectations, responsibilities, emotions, without ever pausing to examine the person carrying all of it. But something changes when you stop everything for a moment, step back, and choose to focus on your inner world with intention. 30 days may not sound like much, but it's enough time to rebuild direction, strengthen discipline, and clear the mental fog that's been slowing you down. It's enough time to get honest about where your life is drifting and how far you've moved from the person you intended to be. If you approach the next month with clarity and commitment, you'll begin to see small shifts that grow into new habits, new confidence, and eventually a new identity. This isn't about becoming perfect. It isn't about forcing yourself through unrealistic routines. It's about creating space to meet yourself again, slowly, calmly, and with purpose, and maybe in the process, discovering that transformation happens when you stop searching outside and start paying attention to the person within. Let's begin. 1. Audit your life with complete honesty. The first step in any real transformation is not action, but clarity. Before you change anything in your life, you need to understand the structure of the life you're already living, and that requires a level of honesty that most people avoid, not because they are afraid of effort, but because they are afraid of what they might see when they look closely. Take a moment and imagine observing your life the way a researcher examines data, not emotionally, not defensively, just with quiet curiosity. Look at how your days are shaped, what you give your energy to, the people who influence your mood, and the habits that create the results you see around you. This kind of reflection is uncomfortable at first, because it interrupts the stories you've been telling yourself, especially the ones that make you feel safe. But growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in awareness. Start with your time. Over the past week, where has it gone? How much of it was intentional and how much felt reactive or automatic? Then look at your energy. Notice the activities that strengthen you and the ones that leave you mentally or emotionally exhausted. Look at your relationships. Some people bring clarity and elevation, others bring confusion and friction. And then examine your habits, your morning patterns, your night routines, the way you handle stress, the things you do when no one is watching. These little behaviors form the architecture of your life more than any dramatic decision ever will. As you reflect, resist the temptation to criticize yourself. This is not about shame, it's about discovery. The purpose of this audit is not to point out what's wrong with you, but to illuminate what's possible for you. When you see your patterns clearly, you begin to understand why the same results keep repeating. You begin to recognize how much of your life is driven by autopilot rather than intention. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. That awareness alone is powerful. Write things down, not to make a dramatic list, but to make your thinking tangible. When thoughts remain unspoken, they blur together. But on paper, patterns become visible. You may notice that your mornings lack structure and it affects your entire day, or that certain people consistently lower your emotional state, or that your environment is cluttered and it quietly drains your focus without you realizing. These details matter because transformation isn't built on willpower, it's built on understanding. Allow this process to be slow. Sit with the truth long enough for it to settle. The goal isn't to overwhelm yourself, but to create a clear picture of where you stand today, so the next 30 days have direction. Honesty is the foundation of discipline, clarity, and meaningful change. And once you commit to seeing your life without distortion, something inside you shifts. You stop living passively and start living deliberately. For these 30 days, let this be the starting point, a quiet agreement with yourself that you will not look away from your reality, because the moment you see your life clearly is the moment you regain the power to transform it. 2. Define what success means for the next 30 days. If you want the next 30 days to create a real shift in your life, you need to define what success actually looks like in this short, powerful window. Most people carry vague ambitions, general hopes about being better, more focused, more disciplined, more fulfilled. But those feelings don't guide you anywhere unless they are narrowed into something clear. The human mind works best when the target is specific and immediate. That's why a 30-day period is so effective. It forces your goals to become real instead of distant ideas floating somewhere in the future. Take a moment to consider the season you're in right now. Not who you were last year, not who you might be 5 years from now, just who you are today. Every stage of life demands a different definition of success. Sometimes success is rebuilding your discipline. Sometimes it's protecting your mental health. Sometimes it's regaining your focus, improving your physical strength, repairing your sleep, or creating stability in your daily routines. Trying to hold on to an old definition of success is one of the quietest forms of self-sabotage. When your life evolves but your goals don't, you end up chasing the wrong things. So you begin by asking yourself a simple question: what would make the next 30 days meaningful? Maybe it's committing to a morning routine that grounds you. Maybe it's finishing a project you've postponed for too long. Maybe it's rebuilding your confidence through small daily actions. Maybe it's restoring structure to your life after a period of chaos. Whatever it is, let it be personal. Let it be something that genuinely matters, not something you chose because it sounds impressive or matches someone else's expectations. Once you identify it, describe it clearly. Write it down in a sentence or two, not to impress anyone, but to bring it out of your mind and into the physical world. Clarity reduces resistance. Most people fail, not because they lack discipline, but because their minds don't know what to focus on. When your brain understands the target, your energy begins to flow toward it naturally. You stop wasting time on distractions because you finally know where you're going. And here's the quiet beauty of defining success for just 30 days. It reminds you that transformation doesn't require extreme pressure or endless ambition. It requires direction. Even a slow pace becomes powerful when it's pointed at the right target. You don't have to fix your whole life this month. You only need to choose the one shift that will create the greatest ripple in everything else. One clear aim can realign your habits, your mood, your decisions, and the way you show up for yourself. As you define your version of success, let it feel honest and human. You're not trying to prove anything. You're trying to grow. Focus on what will genuinely elevate your life, even if it looks simple from the outside. The most profound changes often begin with subtle adjustments in the way you think and the standards you set for yourself. For the next 30 days, your definition of success becomes your compass. It tells you what to say yes to and what to decline. It filters your choices. It shapes your days. And when you honor it consistently, something shifts internally. You no longer move blindly through your routine. You move with purpose. And purpose, even when quiet, is one of the strongest forces a person can carry. 3. Build a clear 30-day roadmap. Before real change becomes visible, it needs structure, something simple enough for your mind to trust and strong enough for your discipline to follow. A 30-day roadmap is not meant to feel dramatic or grand. It's meant to feel like a steady rhythm your life can move with. Most people fail at transformation because they build plans that look impressive on paper but collapse under the weight of daily reality. What you need instead is a roadmap that fits the person you are today while guiding you toward the person you want to become. Start by imagining the next 30 days as a single path, not a collection of isolated efforts. Each day is connected to the next, and every action you take, no matter how small, creates momentum for the following day. When you build the roadmap, think in terms of simple, repeatable behaviors rather than ambitious, unsustainable tasks. Your brain doesn't revolt against consistency, it revolts against overwhelm. So the goal is not to design a plan that impresses you on day 1, but one you can still follow on day 23, when your energy is low and life gets noisy. Begin with the one outcome you defined in the previous step. Then break it down into supporting actions, the kind of actions that are clear enough to execute without hesitation. If your goal is to rebuild focus, maybe your roadmap includes a distraction-free morning, a 20-minute block of deep work, and an evening review of your day. If your goal is to strengthen your discipline, maybe it includes a fixed wake-up time, a commitment to start tasks immediately, and a promise to limit negotiation with your emotions. Whatever you choose, let the actions feel realistic but meaningful, things that stretch you without breaking you. As you build this roadmap, consider the patterns that have defeated you in the past. Where did your previous plans collapse? Was it unclear priorities, lack of structure, emotional resistance, too many commitments at once? Let these observations guide your design. A successful roadmap isn't created from motivation. It's created from understanding your tendencies and building a system that works with your psychology rather than against it. Once your actions are clear, assign them a place in your day. Routines fail when they float without anchors. Decide when things happen, not just what happens. Morning rituals go in the morning. Deep work goes in the time of day you naturally feel strongest. Reflection goes at night. When time and action merge, habit becomes easier to build. And when habit becomes easier, change becomes inevitable. Write your roadmap somewhere visible, a notebook, a wall, your phone. What matters is that you constantly return to it. Familiarity creates commitment. Every time you see your plan, you reinforce your identity as someone who follows through. This simple repetition strengthens your resolve more than motivation ever could. And as you move through the month, expect resistance. Expect days when you want to pause or take shortcuts. That's not a sign of failure, it's a sign of growth. A roadmap is not meant to eliminate struggle, it's meant to guide you through it. When you feel yourself drifting, return to the path you built. Remind yourself that the goal is not perfection, but presence. The roadmap is there to keep you centered, not to punish you. What makes a 30-day roadmap so powerful is that it creates a contained challenge, long enough to matter, short enough to maintain intensity. It becomes a quiet agreement between you and your future self. For the next month, I will move with intention. When you commit to that, even softly, your actions begin to align with your potential. And once that alignment begins, change is no longer a question of possibility. It becomes a question of inevitability. 4. Let go of what drains you. If you truly want the next 30 days to mean something, you have to create space for change. And that means letting go, quietly, intentionally, and without drama. Most people try to build a new life while holding tightly to the very things that exhaust them, distract them, or keep them emotionally stuck. You cannot transform while carrying weight that doesn't belong to your future. Letting go isn't a gesture of weakness, it's an act of strength, a recalibration of your inner world so that growth becomes possible again. Start by noticing the small drains, the subtle leaks in your energy that you've been tolerating for too long, the grudges you carry, the unresolved emotions that echo in the back of your mind, the old versions of yourself you still compare everything to. These things don't shout, they whisper, they cling, and over time they shape the way you think, the way you move, and the way you show up for yourself. When your mind is filled with unfinished stories, it becomes difficult to create a new one. But letting go isn't about erasing your past. It's about releasing your attachment to it. You don't have to forget what happened. You don't have to pretend it didn't matter. You simply have to decide that it won't have authority over who you're becoming. This decision happens quietly, often in a single moment of clarity. When you realize that holding on no longer protects you, it limits you. Think about the habits that drain you, the distractions that steal hours from your day, the emotional patterns that pull you into cycles you've outgrown. For these 30 days, choose to create some distance. Not forever, not dramatically, just enough to breathe again. Sometimes letting go isn't an event, it's a shift. It's stopping yourself mid-habit, pausing, and choosing something different. Over time, those small choices become a new reality. And then, consider the people in your life, not with blame, not with judgment, but with honesty. Some people add clarity, others add noise, some bring out your strength, others reinforce your weaknesses. As you move into a month of focusing on yourself, you need emotional space. That doesn't mean cutting everyone off. It means becoming aware of who influences you and how. It means creating boundaries that protect your peace without apologizing for it. Letting go also applies to identities, the stories you tell yourself about who you are. Maybe you've been holding on to an outdated version of yourself, the one who gives too much, the one who avoids change, the one who stays quiet, the one who doubts their own capability. These internal labels shape your behavior more than you realize. For these next 30 days, allow yourself to step away from those old narratives. Let your actions, not your past, define who you are. You'll notice something once you begin this process. Your mind becomes lighter, your decisions become cleaner, your attention becomes more available. Letting go creates a kind of inner silence, a spaciousness that becomes the perfect environment for discipline, clarity, and new growth. Without that space, even the best plans struggle to take root. So as you enter this chapter of your life, make a gentle commitment to release what no longer fits. You're not abandoning your past. You're choosing your future. You're choosing focus over noise, strength over stagnation, movement over attachment. And when you make that choice consistently, even quietly, you begin to sense a different version of yourself emerging, lighter, calmer, and far more capable of rising in the direction you've always wanted to go. 5. Create personal rules. You don't break. There is a moment in every meaningful transformation when you realize that motivation alone won't carry you. Motivation rises, fades, returns, disappears. It's unstable. What creates stability, what creates real personal strength, is the set of rules you quietly commit to and refuse to break. These rules are not restrictions, they are anchors, They protect your focus, your time, your energy, and your identity as you move through the next 30 days. And the surprising thing is that the more clearly you define them, the more freedom you feel. Personal rules are different from goals. Goals describe what you want. Rules describe who you are willing to be. They act as the invisible architecture of your behavior, shaping your decisions even when you're tired, stressed, or distracted. The right rules simplify your life because they remove negotiation. You don't ask yourself whether you should do something you already decided. This eliminates the internal friction that drains most people before they even begin. Start with the basics: how you wake up, how you start your mornings, how you end your nights. A rule might be as simple as no phone during the first 30 minutes of the day, not because it sounds impressive, but because it protects your mind from external noise before you've strengthened your internal state. Or it might be, never skip the one task that moves my life forward today. Even if the day falls apart, even if everything feels overwhelming, you complete that one meaningful action. Over time, this single rule reshapes your sense of control. Then, move into your environment. If clutter makes you feel mentally scattered, create a rule about order. 5 minutes each night to reset your space. If certain digital habits weaken your focus, create rules about screen time. If specific conversations drain your energy, create boundaries around them, not as walls, but as filters that protect your emotional clarity. These personal rules don't require explanation or justification. They exist because they support who you want to become. And then there are the deeper rules, the ones that define your character. Perhaps a rule like, I finish what I start unless it no longer aligns with my values. Or, I don't respond emotionally when I'm tired. Or, I speak to myself with the same respect I offer others. These kinds of rules shape the way you interact with your inner world, and that interaction determines the quality of your life more than any external achievement. As you craft your rules for these 30 days, keep them simple. Complexity invites failure. Clarity invites consistency. You don't need 20 rules. You need a handful that matter, and once you choose them, treat them as non-negotiable. Breaking a rule isn't the end of the world, but honoring it, even on difficult days, builds a kind of quiet power within you. It reminds you that you can trust yourself, that your word means something, that you're capable of discipline even when your emotions resist it. There will be moments when your mind tries to bargain with you, moments when comfort feels more inviting than commitment, moments when the old version of you whispers that it won't matter if you skip a rule just this once. But every time you honor your personal laws, you reinforce the new identity you're building. And every time you break them, you reawaken the version of you that kept waiting for the right time to change. You're not creating these rules for others. You're creating them for yourself, for the person you're becoming over the next 30 days. They are a promise, a structure, a quiet declaration that your life is worth taking seriously. When you live by your own standards instead of the world's pressure, something shifts inside you. You feel grounded, clear, capable, and you begin to move through your days with a sense of direction that doesn't depend on how you feel. This is the power of personal rules. They transform discipline from something you chase into something you embody. They make integrity a daily habit. And once that alignment takes hold, everything in your life begins to rise to meet it. 6. Build a morning system that sets the tone. A true transformation doesn't begin in the middle of the day or when motivation suddenly appears. It begins the moment you wake up. The first hour of your morning is the foundation for everything that follows. And yet it's the most neglected part of most people's lives. They start the day with noise, with distraction, with urgency that isn't theirs. They enter the world before they enter themselves. And this single mistake shapes the rest of the day more than they realize. A morning system is not about productivity hacks or rigid routines. It's about designing a consistent sequence that prepares your mind and energy for the kind of person you want to be. It's about stepping into your day with intention instead of reactivity. The goal is not to control everything. It's to establish a tone, a rhythm, a sense of centeredness that carries you through whatever the day brings. Begin with something simple: awareness. Before you reach for your phone, before you speak to anyone, give yourself a moment to arrive. Sit with your breath. Sit with the quiet. Feel the transition between sleep and wakefulness. This gentle pause does something powerful. It anchors your nervous system, giving you clarity before the world begins to pull at your attention. When you start with presence, your entire day becomes more grounded. Then, add a small act of movement. It doesn't have to be a full workout. Even a few minutes of stretching or walking sends a message to your body. I am preparing myself. Movement activates your mind, sharpens your focus, and primes your energy. It's one of the fastest ways to shift your internal state from passive to intentional. These tiny physical rituals build a sense of momentum before the external world has a chance to influence you. Hydration, too, plays a role. Water before coffee. Clarity before stimulation. This small habit supports your cognitive function and sets a physical standard for the rest of your day. And then, once your body is awake, spend a moment reviewing your plan, your roadmap for these 30 days. Not in a rushed, anxious way, but as a reminder of direction. When your mornings connect you to your priorities, you carry those priorities with you everywhere. A strong morning system also includes emotional preparation. Ask yourself quietly, what kind of person do I want to be today? Calm, focused, disciplined, compassionate, intentional. Naming the state you want creates a type of psychological gravity. You begin to act in alignment with it throughout the day. Research and experience both show that when you define your identity early, your behaviors follow. And remember, this system is yours. It doesn't need to impress anyone. It doesn't need to be long or complicated. In fact, the simpler it is, the more sustainable it becomes. A few minutes of silence, a few minutes of movement, a moment of intention, a review of your plan. That's enough. What truly matters is the consistency. When you repeat this sequence for 30 days, it becomes more than a routine. It becomes part of your identity. There will be days when you wake up tired, unmotivated, or overwhelmed. Days when the system feels unnecessary. Those are the days when it matters most. A morning system is not built for your strongest mornings, but for your weakest. It's a structure you can lean on when your emotions aren't cooperating. It's a way of telling yourself, through action, that even if the day feels heavy, you still begin with dignity, order, and direction. By the end of 30 days, you'll notice something subtle but profound. Your mornings stop feeling accidental, your focus sharpens, your discipline strengthens, you become less reactive and more deliberate. And slowly, without forcing it, your life begins to shape itself around the person you are practicing to become. This is the quiet power of a morning system. It doesn't just change your days, it changes your identity. And once your identity shifts, the rest of your life follows. 7. Turn your vision into visible action. There is a difference between knowing what you want and living in a way that brings it closer. Most people carry their goals in their minds, vague, floating ideas that never develop the weight needed to change behavior. For the next 30 days, you need something more concrete. You need your vision to exist in the physical world, not just your imagination. When you make your goals visible, they stop being dreams and start becoming instructions. Begin by writing down exactly what you want these 30 days to create for you. Not paragraphs, not essays, just clear, concise lines that reflect your direction. When a goal is written, it becomes a reference point. When it stays in your mind, it becomes a distraction. The human brain handles external structure far better than internal chaos, and writing gives your goals structure immediately. But the real power comes when you break that vision into actions, tangible, daily steps that keep you accountable. This is where most people slip. They set an intention but never translate it into behavior. They say they want discipline. They say they want clarity. They say they want growth. But unless those desires are connected to specific actions, nothing changes. So take your vision and convert it into tasks. If your goal is to improve your focus, you might assign yourself a daily deep work session. If your goal is to improve your health, you might commit to daily walks and consistent meals. If your goal is emotional stability, you might incorporate reflection, breathwork, or specific boundaries into your day. Once these actions are defined, display them somewhere you will see every single day. Your wall, your desk, your mirror, your lock screen. The placement doesn't matter, the visibility does. When your goals confront you physically, you remove the option of forgetting. You eliminate the escape route that leads to procrastination. You stay connected to the bigger picture even when your motivation fades. Think of this as building your own action board, a structure that reminds you quietly and consistently of who you're trying to become. When your environment reflects your intentions, your behavior begins to follow naturally. We underestimate how much our surroundings shape us. A 30-day transformation doesn't require more willpower. It requires better alignment. And your environment is a powerful tool in creating that alignment. As you follow this system, something interesting happens. The gap between your vision and your actions begins to shrink. You stop feeling like someone who hopes for change and start feeling like someone who creates it. This shift in identity, subtle but undeniable, is one of the most important parts of transformation. Your confidence builds not from results, but from consistency. Every time you complete a task that supports your vision, you reinforce the belief that you can rely on yourself. And when you inevitably experience resistance, don't treat it as failure. Resistance is just a sign that you're operating differently than you're used to. It means you're pushing beyond old habits. When your mind tells you to skip a step or delay a task, that's the exact moment when following through matters most. These are the moments that shape who you become after the 30 days are over. By turning your vision into visible action, you create a bridge between intention and reality. You give your days structure, your choices meaning, and your goals a physical presence. And when your actions begin to match your vision, even imperfectly, your life shifts in ways you can feel, subtle at first, then unmistakable. This is how transformation begins, not through inspiration, but through alignment. Not through big gestures, but through visible daily proof that you are showing up for yourself. Over the next month, let your actions become evidence of the life you're building, one quiet decision at a time. 8. Journal daily to understand your inner world. If the next 30 days are meant to reshape your life, then you need a way to track the shifts happening inside you, because real transformation doesn't start on the outside. It begins quietly, in the thoughts you repeat, the stories you carry, the emotions you avoid, and the patterns you fall into without noticing. Journaling becomes the tool that reveals all of this, not as a discipline forced upon you, but as a space where you meet yourself honestly, without pressure, without performance, and without pretending. When you write, you slow down the chaos of your mind. Thoughts that felt overwhelming begin to separate. Emotions that felt heavy begin to lighten. Confusion becomes clearer, and clarity becomes strategy. Most people never take the time to observe their mental world. They simply react to it. They feel frustrated, but never write about why. They feel stuck, but never explore the root. They repeat a behavior, but never question the pattern. Journaling stops this cycle. It shifts you from living unconsciously to living deliberately. Start simple. At the end or beginning of your day, open a notebook and ask yourself 3 quiet questions. What did I do today? What did I feel today? What do I need tomorrow? These questions alone can transform your awareness. They teach you to examine your behavior, understand your emotions, and prepare your mind for the next step. Over time, your journal becomes a map of your growth, showing you how far you've come and what still needs attention. Some days you may write a full page, other days a few lines. What matters is the consistency. Writing daily is not about producing something beautiful, it's about producing something honest. It's about building a relationship with your inner voice, the same voice that guides your actions, shapes your discipline, and either strengthens or weakens your ability to focus on yourself. When you journal, you give that voice a place to speak clearly. This practice also reveals your patterns. As the days pass, you'll start to notice certain triggers that repeat, certain excuses that show up at the same times, certain emotional dips that follow similar situations. These patterns are important. They show you where your transformation is being challenged, and they point directly to the areas you need to understand more deeply. Without journaling, these insights remain buried. With journaling, they become obvious. And then there are the small victories, the little improvements that are easy to overlook. A more focused morning, a clearer boundary, a calmer decision. Journaling captures these things so you don't forget them. Because progress, especially in its early stages, is subtle. It whispers before it shouts. If you don't write it down, your mind will convince you that nothing is happening. But the journal tells the truth. Change is already in motion. As the 30 days unfold, the journal also becomes a tool for emotional stability. On difficult days, you can look back and remember the clarity you had. You can see the strength you've shown. You can track the promise you made to yourself and the steps you've already taken. It becomes harder to give up when you can literally see the evidence of your commitment. Finally, journaling becomes a compass. It aligns your inner world with your daily actions. It gives you direction when you feel lost and confidence when you feel uncertain. It teaches you that discipline is not just something you do, it's something you understand. And understanding comes from reflection. By the end of these 30 days, your journal won't just be a record, it will be a mirror of your growth, a grounding tool, and a reminder of your potential. It will show you the difference between who you were when you began and who you're becoming now. And when you read back through it, you'll realize something important. You didn't just write about change, you lived it. 9. Master consistency, not perfection. When people talk about transformation, they often imagine dramatic breakthroughs, days filled with intensity, motivation, and perfect execution. But real change doesn't happen in those moments. It happens in the quieter ones, the ordinary days when you don't feel inspired, when the routine feels repetitive, when the progress seems too slow to notice. Consistency, not perfection, is the force that reshapes your identity over the next 30 days. And understanding this truth frees you from the pressure that keeps so many people stuck. Perfection is fragile. It collapses the moment life gets messy, and life always gets messy. A bad night of sleep, an unexpected responsibility, a wave of self-doubt, a long day at work. These things break perfection easily. But consistency is resilient. It adapts. It survives interruptions. It works with whatever energy you have, not the energy you wish you had. Consistency tells you, do something today, even if it's small, even if it's imperfect. And that one principle is powerful enough to carry you through all 30 days. Think of consistency as a quiet agreement you make with yourself. Not a promise to be flawless, but a promise to stay engaged, to show up in any form you can, to keep moving even when the movement is slow. When you adopt this mindset, resistance loses much of its power. You stop battling your emotions and start working alongside them, recognizing that discipline isn't about feeling ready. It's about choosing to continue despite how you feel. Begin by lowering the psychological pressure you place on the process. Instead of thinking, I must do everything perfectly today, shift toward, I just need to stay connected to my goal. This reframing changes everything. It removes shame, reduces overwhelm, and makes the next step manageable. When you're consistent, even your imperfect days contribute to your progress. They maintain the rhythm, preserve the momentum, and keep your identity aligned with your intentions. This is where the real psychological shift occurs. Every time you show up for the workout, the writing, the reflection, the routine, you reinforce a deeper belief. I am someone who follows through, and that belief is more important than any single action you complete. Identity shapes behavior. Behavior shapes results. Results shape confidence, and confidence strengthens identity. This cycle becomes the engine that moves you through the 30 days. Of course, resistance will appear. There will be days when you question the point of it all, days when you feel slow, unmotivated, or emotionally scattered. These are the days when most people give up, not because they can't continue, but because they believe inconsistency ruins everything. But nothing ruins everything unless you let it. A missed day is not a failure, it is a moment. What matters is what you do next. Understand something fundamental. The most successful people you can imagine rarely have perfect routines. They have flexible ones. They've learned how to adjust without abandoning themselves. They've learned that staying connected to the path, no matter how lightly, is more important than walking it perfectly. This mindset removes the all-or-nothing thinking that sabotages so many attempts at change. To make consistency easier, build small rituals around your commitments. A cue that signals the start. A simple environment that supports your effort. A familiar routine that eliminates decision-making. When your actions become predictable, your mind relaxes. You don't internalize every task as a challenge. You see it as part of your day. The more automatic your habits become, the less resistance they trigger. And then, track your consistency, not your perfection. Check off the days you showed up, even if you showed up imperfectly. Seeing a streak of commitment builds a quiet pride, a sense of momentum that becomes difficult to break. Humans are wired to protect what they've invested in. When you see your progress laid out in front of you, you naturally want to continue. By the end of these 30 days, you won't remember every perfect moment. You'll remember the rhythm, the daily choosing, the nights when you pushed through, the mornings when you showed up, even though the motivation wasn't there. Consistency doesn't just change what you do, it changes who you believe you are. And when your identity shifts, transformation becomes unavoidable. This is the power of consistency. Not loud, not dramatic, not flawless, just steady. And steady is what builds a life you can rely on. 10. Remove distractions at the root. If you want the next 30 days to reshape your life in a meaningful way, you must protect your attention like something sacred. For most people, the greatest threat to their progress isn't lack of discipline, intelligence, or ambition, it's distraction. Not the big, obvious kinds, but the subtle daily interruptions that quietly drain mental bandwidth and fracture focus. Transformation becomes almost impossible when your mind is constantly pulled in every direction except the one that matters. The reason distractions are so powerful is that they don't feel harmful in the moment. A few minutes on your phone, a bit of gossip, a quick scroll, a conversation that leads nowhere, a task that belongs to someone else. These moments seem small, but they accumulate, and before you realize it, your day has been shaped entirely by things that do not serve you. In a 30-day transformation, you cannot afford to let external noise dictate your internal direction. Your attention is your most valuable resource, and you have to treat it that way. The mistake people make is trying to fight distractions with willpower. They tell themselves they'll resist, stay focused, and push through. But willpower is a limited resource, especially when you're tired or stressed. The most effective strategy is not resistance, it's removal. Instead of trying to overcome distractions in the moment, eliminate them before the moment comes. You create an environment where focus is the default, not the struggle. Start with your physical environment. Look at the spaces where you spend most of your time. Are they helping you or hindering you? A cluttered desk creates a cluttered mind. A chaotic room breeds chaotic thoughts. Take a few minutes to simplify the space around you. Remove what isn't essential. Organize what you keep. Create a physical environment that reflects the mental clarity you're trying to build. Then, address your digital world. This is where most distractions live. Audit your apps, your notifications, the accounts you follow, the voices you allow into your mind. Ask yourself, does this help me become the person I'm building over the next 30 days? If the answer is no, mute it, hide it, limit it, or remove it entirely. Silence notifications that pull you away from your priorities. Delete apps that encourage mindless scrolling. Reduce the noise until only what matters is left. And don't overlook your emotional environment. Some distractions come in the form of people, well-meaning, familiar, or comfortable, but misaligned with your path. You don't need to cut anyone off. You simply need to create boundaries that protect your focus. Let the people in your life know that you're entering a period of intentional growth. You'd be surprised how much peace comes from communicating your priorities clearly and calmly. As you make these adjustments, something subtle begins to shift. You start to notice how much mental space you reclaim from removing just a few distractions. Your thinking becomes clearer. Your decisions become sharper. You feel more present, more aware of where your time is going, and more capable of directing your energy intentionally. Distractions lose their power when the environment no longer supports them. And this is where the deeper transformation happens. When you remove distractions at the source, you free yourself from the constant battle with temptation. You no longer rely on motivation to stay focused. You rely on design. You begin to realize that discipline is not something you generate. It's something you protect. You create conditions that make your success easier, not harder. By the end of these 30 days, you'll look back and notice how different your mind feels. The noise that once filled your days becomes quieter. The urge to escape into meaningless habits weakens, and the space that opens up allows you to pour your attention into the things that genuinely matter: your goals, your growth, your inner stability, your identity. Removing distractions doesn't just create more time, it creates more you, more of your mind, more of your presence, more of the person you're trying to become. 11. Shift into a new identity. Every real transformation begins when you stop trying to change your habits and start changing the source of those habits, your identity. The way you see yourself determines the way you act, and for the next 30 days to truly reshape your life, you need to step into a new version of yourself, not someday in the future, but now, in the small decisions you make every day. Identity is the quiet engine behind discipline, consistency, and growth. When it shifts, everything else follows naturally. Think for a moment about the identity you've been living from. Not the one you talk about, but the one your actions reveal. Maybe you've been operating as someone who tries but hesitates, someone who starts but doesn't finish, someone who wants change but doesn't fully trust themselves. These identities aren't failures. They're patterns built through repetition. And just as they were created through repetition, they can be replaced through repetition. To shift your identity, you don't need dramatic declarations or forceful affirmations. What you need is alignment, actions that match the person you want to become. If you want to be someone disciplined, then discipline isn't something you try. It's something you practice through simple daily choices. If you want to be someone confident, you build that confidence through small acts that prove you can rely on yourself. Identity is not imagined, it is earned. Consider who you want to be at the end of these 30 days. Someone more focused, someone healthier, someone calmer, someone who keeps their promises, someone who no longer negotiates with their weaker impulses. Hold that image gently, not as pressure, but as direction. When you wake up in the morning, ask yourself quietly, what would that version of me do today? And then do something, anything, that aligns with the answer. The shift doesn't happen in big moments. It happens in small ones. When you choose to complete the task instead of postponing it. When you follow your morning system even on a tired day. When you avoid the distraction you know will derail you. When you keep the rule you set for yourself. Each of these decisions is a vote for your new identity. Over time, the votes accumulate until the old version of you no longer feels like home. Be patient with yourself during this process. Identity shifts are subtle. They build quietly below the surface. Some days you'll feel the change, other days you won't. But the absence of visible progress doesn't mean nothing is happening. You're rewiring the way your mind understands itself, and that is deeper than any single habit. Stick with it. Trust the process. Every aligned action strengthens the foundation you're building. And remember, identity is not about perfection, it's about direction. The person you are becoming matters more than the mistakes you make along the way. You don't need to erase the past version of yourself. You only need to outgrow it. Bit by bit, decision by decision, you move closer to a version of yourself that feels grounded, capable, intentional, and proud. By the end of these 30 days, the change will be noticeable, not just in what you do, but in how you think, how you react, how you carry yourself. You will feel more aligned with the life you're building. more responsible for your own direction, more connected to the identity you are shaping. And that identity, quiet, resilient, disciplined, becomes the foundation for every transformation that comes after. This is the real power of focusing on yourself. You don't just change your habits, you change the person creating them, and once that person evolves, everything else naturally rises to meet them. As you reach the end of these 30 days, something subtle but powerful begins to take shape inside you. Not a sudden transformation, not a dramatic breakthrough, just a quiet certainty. A recognition that the person you've been practicing to become is real, that every small, imperfect step mattered more than you thought, that the discipline you built, the clarity you gained, and the identity you've stepped into are not temporary states, but the beginning of a new way of living. You may not notice the change immediately. Growth rarely announces itself. It arrives softly through calmer mornings, clearer decisions, stronger boundaries, and a deeper sense of trust in yourself. It shows up in the way you handle resistance, the way you respond to distractions, the way you return to your path even after difficult days. These small shifts are not small at all. They are the architecture of your new life. What matters now is that you don't treat these 30 days as an event, something separate from your real life. The real transformation happens when you carry the lessons forward, when these practices stop being experiments and start becoming part of who you are. The identity you've been building is not fragile, it's not a phase, it's not a temporary burst of motivation. It's a foundation, something to expand, strengthen, and rely on. You've proven something important, not to anyone else, but to yourself. You've proven that consistency is possible, that discipline is not about perfection, but presence, that focus is not a gift, but a choice, and that when you give your attention to your inner world, everything around you begins to align in ways you didn't expect. And maybe the most meaningful thing you've discovered is this: you don't need permission to change. You don't need the perfect moment. You don't need to wait for motivation to strike. All you needed, truly, was a decision. One quiet, intentional decision to focus on yourself and see what happens. Now you know what happens. Now you've lived it. So when the next chapter begins, don't rush. Don't force anything. Just continue. Continue the clarity. Continue the discipline. Continue the identity you've stepped into. Let these 30 days be the start of a life where you move with intention, where you trust your ability to follow through, and where you meet each day with a sense of grounded possibility. Because the transformation you've built here isn't meant to end. It's meant to evolve. It's meant to lead you into the version of yourself that's been waiting quietly in the background, patient, capable, strong, and ready. And maybe that's all growth ever is. The courage to listen to that version of yourself and the commitment to become them, one intentional day at a time.